Welcome back to our channel, where we delve into the most shocking and impactful true crime cases. Today we're exploring a heartbreaking and deeply troubling incident that shook the nation, the case of Atatiana Jefferson. This is a story about a tragic encounter, a shocking police video, and the quest for justice. Atatiana Jefferson was a 28-year-old woman from Fort Worth, Texas. She was known for her vibrant personality, her dedication to her family, and her promising career aspirations. Atatiana was a pre-med graduate who had moved in with her ailing mother to help care for her. She was a loving sister, daughter, and aunt, whose life was tragically cut short. Atatiana's story is one of potential and promise, a young woman with a bright future who found herself caught in a situation that no one could have foreseen. Her commitment to her family was evident in her decision to move in and provide care for her mother, highlighting the kind and compassionate person she was. Her untimely death left a void in the lives of those who knew her and sparked a movement demanding justice and change. Atatiana was more than just a victim. She was a person with dreams, ambitions, and a profound love for her family, whose loss is felt deeply by all who knew her. On the night of October 12, 2019, Atatiana was at home playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew, Zion. It was a quiet evening filled with laughter and bonding, the kind of peaceful night many families cherish. However, this serene evening took a tragic turn when a concerned neighbor noticed her front door was ajar and called a non-emergency police line for a welfare check, hoping to ensure everything was all right. The neighbor's intentions were good, aiming to protect Atatiana and her family. Little did anyone know that this simple act of concern would lead to a devastating outcome. The events that unfolded were a stark reminder of how quickly and unexpectedly life can change. The quiet neighborhood, usually a place of safety, became the backdrop for a tragic and senseless act of violence. Zion, who adored his aunt, would forever carry the traumatic memory of that night, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. Officer Aaron Dean responded to the call. Arriving at the scene, he observed the house from the outside, walking around the perimeter without announcing his presence. As he moved around, his body cam captured the eerie stillness of the night, a scene that would soon become infamous. Officer Dean's approach was cautious, yet it lacked the crucial step of identifying himself as law enforcement. As he approached a window, he saw movement inside. Without identifying himself, he suddenly shouted a command to, "Put your hands up," and almost immediately fired a shot through the window. Atatiana Jefferson was struck and killed instantly in what should have been the safety of her own home. The rapid escalation and immediate use of lethal force were shocking, leaving many to question the protocols and training of the responding officer. The moment captured on body cam was both horrifying and heartbreaking, showing how quickly a situation could spiral out of control. The footage became a painful testament to a night that forever altered the lives of Atatiana's family and her community. The body cam footage, intended to provide transparency, captured the entire shocking incident. The video showed the rapid escalation and the fatal decision made in mere seconds. The community was outraged. How could a welfare check turn into a deadly encounter? Protests erupted, demanding answers and justice for Atatiana. The footage sparked widespread outrage and grief, with many people taking to the streets to express their anger and demand accountability. Atatiana's death was seen not just as an isolated incident, but as part of a broader pattern of police violence and systemic issues within law enforcement. The community's response was powerful and immediate, with vigils, marches, and calls for change echoing across the city and beyond. The public outcry highlighted the deep mistrust between the police and the communities they are sworn to protect. This incident, like many before it, underscored the urgent need for systemic change and the implementation of measures to prevent such tragedies in the future. Interview with family members and community leaders. Family member: Atatiana was in her own home, taking care of her nephew. She posed no threat. This should never have happened. Community leader: This incident is a tragic example of why we need significant police reform. We cannot allow those who are supposed to protect us to act with such recklessness. The voices of Atatiana's family and community leaders added a deeply personal and urgent dimension to the calls for justice. Her family described her as a bright light in their lives, a person who was always there for others and who had so much more to give. Community leaders spoke out about the broader implications of her death, highlighting the need for comprehensive police reform and greater accountability. Their testimonies underscored the human cost of systemic failures and the urgent need for change. The community leaders' comments reflected a collective demand for a policing system that respects and protects all citizens. Their impassioned pleas for justice served as a rallying cry for a movement that aimed to address the deep-seated issues within the law enforcement system. Officer Aaron Dean was charged with murder, and the trial began a lengthy legal process. The prosecution argued that Dean acted recklessly and without justification. The defense, however, claimed he believed there was a threat inside the home. The courtroom became a battleground for these conflicting narratives, each side presenting evidence and arguments to support their case. The prosecution focused on the lack of identification and the rapid escalation to lethal force, while the defense emphasized the perceived threat and the split-second nature of the decision. The trial was closely watched, with many hoping it would set a precedent for future cases involving police misconduct. Each day in court brought new revelations and emotional testimonies, painting a detailed picture of the events leading up to and following the tragic shooting. The courtroom was filled with tension as both sides laid out their arguments, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of a community's grief and the pursuit of justice. In conference, prosecutors say, this was a gross misuse of force. Atatiana Jefferson was a victim of a system that failed to protect her. Defense attorneys say, Officer Dean responded to what he believed was a dangerous situation. He made a split-second decision based on the information available at that moment. These statements encapsulated the central issues of the trial and the broader debate about police use of force. The prosecutor's remarks highlighted the systemic issues that contributed to Atatiana's death, emphasizing the need for accountability and reform. The defense attorney's comments, on the other hand, focused on the individual officer's perspective and the challenging nature of split-second decisions in potentially dangerous situations. The trial thus became a microcosm of the larger national conversation about policing and justice. The courtroom exchanges were tense and charged, reflecting the high stakes of the case and its wider implications for law enforcement practices. As the trial progressed, it became clear that this was not just about the actions of one officer, but about the need for systemic change in the way law enforcement interacts with the communities they serve. Throughout the trial, Atatiana's family remained steadfast, seeking justice for her untimely death. They wanted to ensure that her story was not forgotten and that steps would be taken to prevent such tragedies in the future. The emotional toll on her family and community was immense as they relived the horror of that night through the trial. Memorials and tributes to Atatiana sprang up, serving as poignant reminders of her life and the senselessness of her death. Her family's grief and determination to seek justice were palpable, resonating with many who followed the case. Community members gathered at these memorials to pay their respects, share their grief, and renew their calls for change. The outpouring of support from the community was a testament to Atatiana's impact on those around her and the collective desire to honor her memory by fighting for a better, safer world. The case of Atatiana Jefferson is a stark reminder of the urgent need for police reform and accountability. Her story has become a symbol of the fight against unnecessary use of force and the demand for justice for all victims of police violence. Community rallies and calls for justice have continued, with activists and advocates pushing for changes to ensure that no other family has to endure what Atatiana's family has gone through. The case has spurred renewed efforts to address systemic issues within law enforcement, including better training, accountability measures, and community-based approaches to public safety. The sustained activism reflects a commitment to transforming the system and preventing future tragedies. The movement sparked by Atatiana's death has grown into a broader call for justice, equality, and the protection of all citizens from unnecessary violence. Thank you for joining us today as we explored the tragic case of Atatiana Jefferson. Her story is a call to action for systemic change and a reminder that we must continue to seek justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories and updates.